I'm Matthew H. I'm an addict.
I'm Matthew.
My clean date's 9/28/09, and my home group is He to Recover. I just get emotional over fucking everything. So I just cry, and how I know it's real for me is when I'm touched in my spirit and I can shed those tears, because I never could cry. Like my whole life, I just held on and when you're a bystander and you're watching someone's life, well, like I was a bystander watching Robert's life and his journey in Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm not going to share his story because he just did, but I'm going to tell a little bit about mine. I was going to ask, how many people in this room have a sponsor? How many people in this room call their sponsor regularly? Okay. It's important for me. I don't know your experience with sponsorship, but for me, it's real important that, because I take everything fucking personal. I don't know about anyone else. And we get busy around here, and we get lives. That's the benefit. There's one message. It's a message of hope, and it's a promise of freedom. And there's one disease, so I do one program. I don't need to give my spiel about why Narcotics Anonymous works for me. That's what I found. But my original sponsor sits in this room, and the first thing, the guy that's cooking, I was in treatment, man, and I lied on a pass to go to church, but I knew I needed to go to Narcotics Anonymous. And so I had a girl, right? Always got a girl, pick me up from treatment and drive me to the Forest Grove Recovery Club. And that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't know that I got clean, at that club. And it's a big part of my life. And I rarely go back there, and that doesn't show my gratitude for Narcotics Anonymous. I go there at least once a month. I try to go there more, but I don't make it anymore. And I'm trying to work on those things. But anyway, so I went to this meeting, and this guy says, so have you thought about who you're going to ask to be your sponsor? And I said, yeah, I'm going to ask the old man. And Robert says, okay, we're going to his house after this. And I thought, oh, fuck. Like, now I got to do something, right? It's not like I can lip service and say I'm going to ask this dude and never ask the motherfucker. It's like I got to show up and do it now. So I remember coming up the steps, and it's like coming up the steps to a podium. It's like that feeling when you feel like you're going to fall down and you can't carry your legs anymore. It's like jello. And I remember walking in there, and I went to go open my mouth, and I said, John, I need to ask you something. And John says, oh yeah, you need to ask me something? And I went to open my mouth. He goes, you need to shut the fuck up, because you're always talking. And so I asked him to sponsor me. He never gave me an answer. But what he did do was he suggested that I get a book, and I read the book. And so that was the first thing I did. I say that I'm bisexual. I started out in the other one, and I don't need to share that. But what happened is that he gave me a set of principles, and I was doing a 4-step, and I was in treatment, and my counselor has like 28 years, so he didn't clinically counsel me because I was like the master manipulator with a pen, like I can write real good, and I wrote all this shit, and I gave him this plan, right? I had this master plan written out, and he threw it back at me, and he says, that looks like a fucking needle in your arm. And I thought, how fucking dare you tell me with all this, I got support, I got a sponsor, I got a clean and sober house I'm gonna go to. I thought I had it going on, I'm gonna make this recovery thing work. And so I went to John's, and I was broken, and my counselor wouldn't give me a release date. And this is the first thing that I learned about sponsorship, man, was that, is I went to John, and John says, well, what happens if you don't graduate from treatment? I said, well, then I get to go back to jail. I was on a sanction, and he says, well, you gonna stay clean? And I said, okay, yeah, I'll stay clean, but I don't want to go back to jail clean. And he says, well, what are you gonna do after you get out of jail? And I said, I don't know, I'm gonna be homeless. And that old man says to me, he says, well, you can't sleep on my couch because I sleep on my couch, but you can sleep in my bed. And that was the first time that Narcotics Anonymous had my back. And I knew without a doubt that if I fucking put in work around here, that these people would do whatever was in their power to help me in my life, right? So I worked with that sponsor, and he took me to my first convention in Narcotics Anonymous. He got clean down in the Bay Area, and I still didn't believe in myself, right? Like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. You know, I had like 5 months clean, and I'm confused, and I'm reading 12 different fucking literatures, and I got all these daily fucking whatever they are on my table, and I'm confused, right? And I go to a meeting, and this lady, right? I never listened to a woman. I would never. What do you mean, listen to a woman's perspective? I mean, come on, right? I had that false ego and pride that they were less than me and all this shit, right? But I went to this sponsor. I went to this convention in Northern Cali, and he's had health problems since then. And my first experience with sponsorship was carrying my sponsor into the convention on my arm to the guest services, and he sat at the front of the convention in front of 10,000 motherfuckers going by him, and he lived it up. But then he says, I was like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do, right? And he goes, go figure it out. Well, I never been to a fucking convention, and this thing's like a book. When you look at a convention that has 46 fucking workshops and 10 speaker meetings, I'm like, which one do I go to? And he's like, get the fuck out of here. Here's some money. Go eat. Go do something. And the other guy we're with fucking spent all of his money on the 25th anniversary basic tech. I think he spent like, what, $200, John? Something like that. And I still had my $200 because I'm a good dope fiend. I ain't spending his money or my money on shit because I want to make sure that I'm going to have some money in my pocket, right? And the dude had this book, man, and I pray for that man today, you know. I don't know what happened to that kid that John brought with us on that trip. You know, I seen him scavenging across the road, and I pray for him. And one thing I'll say about addicts, man, when you ever see an addict in the gutter, I don't say, there for the grace of God go I said, there go I. And the reason why is because I'm no fucking different, man. And when I start saying that shit, like I'm separating myself, that couldn't be me. That's my opinion, and so I say there is me. And when I see people making fun of those people, I'm a shit talker and I'm egotistical and I talk all kinds of shit. But when it comes to the addict that's still suffering, I have this huge place in my heart because I was so confused, man. I didn't believe I'd ever make it. You know, I did not have any self-confidence. And so I go to this meeting and they did the third step prayer, and there was 10,000 people, and I looked at the old man and I burst, man. And ever since that moment, I've been crying ever fucking since. And I can't stop it, you know? But it's the spirit, right? The spirit of Narcotics Anonymous and sponsorship and literature and steps. And what it did was it pushed this passion into me. I seen it at a larger level. Like when you're in the group level, it's hard to see the spread of Narcotics Anonymous. And when you get into an environment when it's fucking huge and you get to see how it spreads its hands, and now it's everywhere in the fucking world, and it's the best shot, man. And sponsorship taught me that you give of yourself freely and you don't have any fucking expectations. And you know, my first sponsor told me like this. He said, so what? You got clean, motherfucker. What are you gonna do for someone else? So I'm not great or too good. If you're like that, stay away from me because I don't want to catch that shit, because I just want to have a human experience. You know, like I'm always a doing guy. I want to have a human experience, and I want to have feeling behind it. And I carried this book up here, and you know, I'm looking at the book, and you know, my first sponsor, I was doing my first I was doing a convention speaker thing, and he comes up to me and he goes, Matthew, the book's great. He goes, it's great, but we want to know who you are. So ever since, I'll get some insight and stuff, but I have to be authentic, right? Sponsorship taught me to stand on my own 2 feet. It also talks about in our literature that the first responsibility of sponsorship, paraphrases, is at the group's level. Okay, so my home group we're a fifth tradition meeting. We're about the newcomer. So if you need a book, most times, right, you're getting a motherfucking book at my home group because it's about the literature, right? And the guys that I've sponsored, and it's funny because they don't even know I sponsored them until they're already fucking done reading the literature. You know, I don't tell guys like, yeah, I'm sponsoring you. What I do is I get them a book and I get them the sponsorship IP. And I tell them that if you can read this and agree to these terms, because it says specifically in the sponsorship IP, it says who is a sponsor, it says what does a sponsor do, what does a sponsee do, right? So that way I know that these are my terms, right? It says I'm not a relationship counselor, I'm not your fucking advisor, right? I'm another addict that suffers with wanting to kill myself one more at a time. Now what is one more at a time? Today, right? I was talking with one of the guys that's speaking in the room and I'm dying, right? But I got fucking cherry pies in my room, right? That's how sick the disease is. They say if you're alone by yourself, you're alone with a killer. The disease is trying to kill you. How is it trying to kill me today? Through health, right? And I've been doing better, and then I come to the retreat, and guess what I do? I do whatever the fuck I want, right? As much as I want, whenever I want, however I want. And my sponsor, okay, so I'm going to get to this. So the old man was my sponsor. How do you change sponsors? Does anyone know? Does anyone change sponsors? How did they do it? How'd you do it? Okay. 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 What about you?
I just asked another guy to be my sponsor and let my prior sponsor know that I'm changing sponsors.
Okay. Anyone else? Alonzo. There you go. We don't hire and fire because you're not getting a paycheck around here. So for the newcomer that doesn't know, we do get paid. We're lying, right? There's a catch to everything in Narcotics Anonymous. Because how do I get paid? I get paid in my spirit. I get paid. Like I'm getting paid, believe it. My bank account says fucking zero right now and I had to borrow money. But in the spirit, I'm fulfilled, right? So I needed to get a new sponsor and I asked the second guy, and it was a conflict of interest for him to sponsor me. So this motherfucker didn't say he'd sponsor me either. So now I'm building cases. My first sponsor tells me to shut the fuck up. My second sponsor says it's a conflict of interest, but you know what? He knows how fucking self-centered and like how temperamental I am. He goes, but wait, I got the next best thing. I'm going to refer you to my sponsor. And at first I was like, I don't know about all this shit. Like, this is kind of weird. I asked one guy, ask another guy. Now I got to go to a meeting, find this other guy I don't know, and I got to ask him to sponsor me. So then I do this, right? And the guy doesn't say he sponsored me. He tells me to get a basic text. I said, I already got one. I've already read it. He says, read the first 107 pages again. I didn't ask you if you already read it. And I'm like, this is the third time in this process. By now I've got like 2 years clean. And I think I know everything about Narcotics Anonymous. And they very quickly take me back to a place of humility and tell me what? Like my sponsee tells me all the time, most of all, I harm myself. Most of all, we harm ourselves, even in recovery. So then I have to go, I got to get the balls to go to the old man. And the old man's a pretty straight-laced motherfucker. So I'm like, damn, I got to go to this dude and tell him that I'm going to change sponsor. I'm thinking he's going to judge me. I'm thinking that he ain't going to hang out with me no more. He ain't going to like me. And I go to him and he says, well, who are you thinking about working with? And I said, well, I'm going to ask Chet. And he goes, oh, I like that, man. That sounds like a great idea. And I was like, what? So I said, thank you for everything you've done. And John will tell you that if you ask him to work the steps with you, he'll work the steps with you. But if you ask him to sponsor you, you're stuck with him for fucking life. And so I've been stuck with him ever since. So John will tell people still, because he still really does sponsor me. I mean, you can say, you know, do I work the steps directly with John now? No, but we break bread together. We share our lives together. And he's been a part of my life ever since. So I started on this new journey and I got through the 12 steps, right? Again, I went through the basic text. Then I went through the It Works How and Why and the Step Working Guide. And I was on fire. And I'm like, there's got to be more, right? Like I could just stop and just be like, okay, I did this, right? Because it's a 12-step program. So I did what was required of me. And through all this time, I'm sponsoring guys. And I'm so self-centered that that's all I know how to do. So like I'm all in myself or I'm helping someone else like all the time. And at the same time, I'm in a relationship, and that's not sponsorship. Though sometimes I'd like to tell her to call her sponsor. And I do. I mean, we have that kind of relationship where she said, hey, did you run that by your sponsor? And that's another thing is that you'll get a lot of guys that speak that talk about, oh, I asked my sponsor if I should supersize my McDonald's fucking meal. Like there's things, definitely, don't get me wrong. We need to go to our sponsor about most things, right? Or we need a sounding board of some authenticity or honesty that's going to share with you, like Robert said, in no uncertain terms. But I also have to learn to stand on my own 2 feet, which is what my first sponsor told me. So my first sponsor is a master manipulator, right? He has this he's got this thing. I don't even know what it was about, but he had something he wanted me to do. And so he's sitting in his car and he's trying to manipulate me with the program, right? But see, now I've been armed with some of the literature, so now I think that I'm just gonna, and so I just kind of shut him down by saying, John, you taught me to stand on my own 2 feet, and I said no, you know? And it was over something stupid like going to the Friday night potluck meeting to support my area. And really what it was about is that I've been hiding out in Portland, Narcotics Anonymous, and it was because, not that there's anything wrong with Washington County Narcotics Anonymous or Hillsborough or any of the cities Narcotics Anonymous. It was easy for me to not be there, right? It was easy for me to go into the bigger meetings and sit in the back and not have to be Matthew, right? And my sponsor taught me, and so through this last second and third step that I did with my sponsor a little while ago, he's never given me firm direction, right? About like exactly what to do other than work steps, motherfucker. I mean, that's what we do, you know? So he's very step oriented. It's all about that. But what it talks about is it says it's meaningless unless we live it. So you can write a fucking 1,000 questions in the step working guide, and if you don't learn how to practically apply that to your daily life, it doesn't mean anything to me, okay? And so what happened with all this was I was filled with all this information, and I think I know all this shit, and I started telling everyone else how to do it, and I became very, very judgmental. So from 3 to 5 years in sponsorship, I was like military kind of Narcotics Anonymous, and what happened was I kept getting sicker. Right? And there was a time when I contemplated suicide because I could no longer live with the drugs and I could no longer live without the drugs. And then my uncle passed and I never dealt with it. And so through sponsorship, I got to process all these things and be honest about all these things and tell him all my insecurities and all my weaknesses. And what I'll share about sponsorship is I was doing a 4-step in a group, and my friend Alonzo was in this group. We did a step working group with my sponsor, my sponsee brother, and Alonzo went through it with us, and we did it through everything. But we were gonna do a 4-step, and these fuckers picked me up, and I'm coming out the house, and I'm like ghost white, right? Like I'm all confident. You see me, I think I'm the shit, blah blah blah. But I'm coming out the house, and Dougie and Chet look at me and they go, "What the fuck's wrong with you?" Kind of like Brownie did this morning when he seen me and I was discontent, right? But I'm still a liar. I'm gonna tell you I'm okay, right? I'm all right until I'm fucking dead, right? That's just my story. And so that's why you have to have those people around you that can see through your denial, right? And so my sponsor and my brother picked me up and they're like, "What's going on with you?" And I'm like, "I'm fearful that I don't want to tell these fuckers what's on my 4-step in a group." I'm like, "I'm not going to do it. Fuck this. I'm not going to do it." And so we get there and we fucking pray in and we get going and everyone else is laughing and joking. It's all good. And I'm like, "Fuck this. I ain't doing it." And I'm sitting there and they're all looking at me. It's kind of funky, you know, it's like getting weird now. And they go around the steps and we get to the resentments and we did all that. And then we get to some of the other behaviors, right? The sexual relationships and stuff. And we get in there and my fucking sponsor opens the door and jumps out the window basically with what he's been doing. And I'm like, well, fuck, my shit ain't even that bad. So I just jumped through the fucking window with him, you know? But I never would have been able to do that if I didn't see it or hear it before me. I would have held on to that sick shit until I'm dead once again. So I have to, it's a show me, right? And it's amazing for me now, you know, like I was looking, you know, everyone works with a sponsor for a while and then they think they hear this guy or they meet this guy or they go to this speaker meeting and I want to work with that guy, you know, and you can go work with anyone in Narcotics Anonymous and you don't got to change sponsors. There's no rule that it says in our literature that says you can't go work with another motherfucker that's got what you want. You know what I'm saying? But if you want what that person has, you got to do what they do. Are you prepared to walk in their shoes with what they've done to get what they got? I can sit here and say that I love what they got, but I ain't willing to do shit to get what they got. And that's what I've seen with most people that change sponsors a lot, is that they're always seeking something else, someone else's message, someone else's story, someone else's stuff. And what happens is they get lost in that process rather than sitting down, trusting a higher power, working steps, and allowing themselves. And you ain't married to nobody, so you tell them what? Thank you, God bless you, and you go on. And so I was having this struggle with my sponsor because they're involved, I won't say what they're involved in, but they're busy, right? Just like me. If you call them, they'll say, Matthew won't answer his motherfucking phone either because he always busy doing this, and right? So it's a two-way street once again. And I'll say this, then I'll be done. So I was contemplating, because I've met all these people over the world, right? These great people, right? They're just fucking addicts, right? They're no greater or lesser than the dude who's loaded on the ground, you know? And I was contemplating in my head in confusion about that I need something else, right? And so I went and I said, no, what I need to do is do the work, right? Because that's where I'm going to get the relief. So I get back into the basic text, I get back into the steps, and I'm sitting down with my sponsor, and he's never given me firm direction. And he says, you will stop taking commitments in Narcotics Anonymous for right now, for 1 year, because you're doing way too fucking much, and you're not helping, you're causing harm to yourself. And so I had to let go of my first service position, right? And it feels like you're fucking losing a kid or something. Once you're committed to your home group and then that position comes up, it's like, fuck, man. So anyways, and part of that is this retreat, you know, this retreat is amazing, and I held this commitment, and I'm grateful that I had this opportunity. But through that second step, he told me, he didn't ask me, right, what I should do. This is what you should do. He told me, you will take care of yourself. And so ever since then, I've been on a chase to do that. And so it's not that I need a new sponsor, right? It's not that a new sponsor is going to be better for me. It's that I got to use the fucking sponsor I got. And if I'm not in contact with him on a regular basis, and I'm not participating in his life instead of being self-centered and asking him to be a part of my life, right? So when people call me, the guys that are closest to me, and I'll shut up. I said that once, but I'll say it again. 3 times. 4 times. Anyways, the guys that are closest to me are the guys that say, how are you doing today, sir? I speak with respect to my guys. A lot of people don't like sir. It's a form of respect. I don't say it to clown people. I say, how are you doing today, sir? I want to be better, right, than I was. And the guys that call me with all that fucking shit, I still don't hang up on them. But sometimes I don't have patience, right? And so I go through a checklist. So who has a home group here? Okay. So how many people have a Narcotics Anonymous basic text? Okay. How many people, they already said they have a sponsor, right? How many people have been through the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous? Okay. How many people are of service to Narcotics Anonymous in any form, right? So when I go through that checklist, if the newcomer says that they haven't done any of those things, it already puts up the red flags of why they're having all the fucking problems in their life. You ain't got a sponsor, you ain't got a fucking book, you haven't gone to a meeting regularly, no home group, and you got 3 girls on your phone and you think there wouldn't be problems? It's pretty obvious, right? And I don't tell them that. I don't like punk them out or make fun of them. I just listen to them, and then I go through my checklist in my head and I go, well, when you get a home group and you get a sponsor or you need a sponsor, let me know. And then I route them directly. Mainly I don't sponsor a lot of guys anymore because I haven't been able to take on any commitments. And so what I do is I directly, from my home group, route them to someone who is available to sponsor them immediately. I don't let them walk out the door. I get them a sponsorship IP. We lock them in with a basic text, and we get them the phone list. And there's at least 15 guys there that have been through the 12 steps that can share their experience, strength, and hope with them. So I hope you guys got something out of that. I'm pretty exhausted, and I wasn't planning on doing this, but I appreciate the opportunity, and I love you guys. Thanks.